Hello, everyone. I'm Eric D'Souza, and you are joining me today for another episode of Crime Writers of Canada's podcast. We are continuing our series of interviewing members of Crime Writers of Canada who have been nominated for an awards of excellence. So today we are talking to my friend Alice Fitzpatrick. Hi, Alice. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you, Eric. Thank you for having me.
Well, it's a pleasure, and you are here today because your novel, A Dark Death, published by Stonehouse Publishing, is nominated for the Whodunit Award for Best Traditional Mystery, sponsored by Jane Doe. A little bit about you. Alice Fitzpatrick has contributed short stories to literary magazines and anthologies, including Crime Writers of Canada's 40th anniversary anthology, Cold Canadian Crime. She is a fearless champion of singing, cats, all things Welsh, and the Oxford comma. Her summers were spent in the Welsh family of Pembrokeshire, inspired the creation of the Meredith Island Mysteries, which include Secrets in the Water and A Dark Death. The Meredith Island Christmas mystery, A Killing Cold, will be released in June. The traditional mystery appeals to her fascination with what makes seemingly ordinary people commit murder. Alice lives in Toronto, but dreams of a cottage on the Welsh coast. Uh, let's talk about the series in general, Alice. Your protagonist, Kate Galloway, um, typically would be called the Kate Galloway Mystery Series. Yours, you call it the Meredith Island Mysteries. So while you're at it, can you tell us a little bit about Meredith Island and why is the whole location the name of the series?
To be perfectly honest, that was suggested by my former agent. Um, I was originally the Kate Galway Mysteries. Maybe she thought that nobody knew who Kate Galway was or cared about who Kate Galway was, and maybe it was more enticing to name it after the setting. So the setting is it's an island off the coast of Wales. It doesn't exist. The times that I've workshopped the first book, the first thing people did when I gave out the pages was they'd immediately go online and try and figure out where Meredith Island was. And I had to explain, I'm a writer, I make stuff up. And I make stuff up because that way I didn't have to do a lot of research with, what plants are growing there, etc. What's the weather like? Um, so it was inspired by a town called Tenby in Pembrokeshire, and anyone who's Welsh knows where Tenby is. This is where everybody went to spend their summer holidays. And I would spend every summer there when I was a teenager because my British family had moved down to Wales, down to Tenby. My aunt and uncle owned a couple of hotels down there. And I figured if I was going to spend the rest of my life writing this series, I wanted it somewhere where I would feel comfortable. And the people are really nice, and it has that really small town feel. And people who've read it who came from small towns have said, yes, it has that small town feeling where everybody knows everybody else to a fault sometimes. And in fact, in Meredith Island, people will walk into each other's homes without knocking, which it takes Kate some time to get used to now that she's back on the island. But it's maybe 125 people. On a good day, they all fit in the pub. And it's one of those places where the whole town is focused around the pub and pub culture. And so when people do get murdered there, um, and hopefully, I'm starting to worry about the Cabot Cove syndrome. And it's really just really doing a number on the tourist trade because most of the people so far that have died have been tourists. So I don't want to kill any of my people off. It's sort of it everybody knows about it and everybody sort of has an opinion about it. And sometimes things can get out of control because I think somebody in the first book says that, and maybe it's Kate, said that the pub is like the nerve center of the whole town. And if anything happens or the island, immediately goes to the pub and everybody knows about it.
Well, let's stick with that theme a little bit. The community is, as you said, very tight-knit and wary of outsiders. Kate, more or less, was an outsider in the first book. How is she fitting in now?
Well, she wasn't an outsider in the sense that she was born there.
Mhm.
And she lived there until she went away to university. And but they would come back she would bring her daughter back for holidays. And so I mean, she is an islander, but but sort of by association because she doesn't actually live there. So yeah, once she figured out the first book is about how her aunt died when Kate was 3 years old, and the islanders believe it was murder. The police thought it was suicide. And so she figures if she's going to move back to the island, she's now retired from teaching. If she's going to move back to the island, she has to figure out exactly what happened to her aunt. Otherwise, there could be a murderer still roaming around. And she does solve the mystery. No spoilers there because they always solve the mystery. Um, so yeah, she's really feeling at home again. I mean, she's back in her grandmother's cottage and it's back around all these people that she's known basically all her life. So it's this gap where she lived on the mainland, but she's back home. And that's sort of, I won't give the spoiler, it's not much of a spoiler. In the first book, she basically decides that at the very end of the book, she decides she is home.
Well, her home has a lot of visitors in A Dark Death. There's, I guess, two sets of visitors. Can you tell us about them, and are the islanders being accommodating to them?
So the first group of people who come over is a university professor and a group of students, 5 students, I think it is. And the university professor specializes in medieval archaeology, and he thinks there is the remains of a monk cell. And there is a monk cell very close to where my folks live, my people live in Wales, and that's sort of I based it on that. But this is in pieces, and he and the students start to dig it up, and they find what they believe is evidence of a Roman temple. Now, why the Romans would build a Roman temple on this island, nobody knows. And I think one of them, I think Mavanwi mentions that in passing, she's one of the students. So the islanders aren't all that impressed. See, they're not big tourist people. And I think part of the thing is they figure if they've got something really substantial on the island that's going to attract people, and they're going to have to sell keychains and tea towels and souvenir stuff. The other person who's on the island is Griffin Blackstock, who is a psychic investigator. No one's quite sure if he's on the level, and he wants to investigate the manor house, which was built by an American in the middle of the 19th century. He basically bought the whole island, built an estate there, and then left when his wife died in childbirth. And so he's there to see if there are any spirits in the manor house. So what I've sort of set up is sort of science versus heaven knows what you want to call psychic investigators.
Well, let's stick to the archaeologists because I heard even before you wrote the book, you really wanted to include archaeology in your story. On your first question, you said you wanted to make up the island because you didn't want to do a lot of research. So, but you can't write about archaeology without doing some research. Was this something new for you, or was it a passion that you wanted to put in?
I love archaeology. My problem with archaeology is that I'm not at all science oriented. What I do have is a master's degree in women's social history. And archaeology for me is really social history. It's how people lived. So you find bits of plates and glasses and things like this. But I can't do the science. And I think my knees aren't in very good shape for me to go and do an archaeological dig anymore. And I like the really, really old stuff. To get the really, really old stuff, you're doing indigenous work, and um, there are some political things going on there. I think that sort of stuff should be done by the people whose culture it is. Um, so I have seen every British archaeology show, say for the last 20, 25 years. And luckily enough, my chiropractor started off life as an archaeologist. And when I thought that so if I have questions that I can't find anywhere else that I haven't found either because of the research or because of the shows that I watch, I go and talk to my chiropractor. And when I asked him why why the switch from archaeology to chiropractic, he said it's not much of a switch. It's still all about the bones.
From your bio, you say that a traditional mystery appeals to your fascination with what makes seemingly ordinary people commit murders. You've been doing this for a while with short stories and novels. What have you come up with so far?
Well, I mean, you see all these TV shows where the police will list off, it's either sex or it's money or it's something else. And um, what happens when I'm writing, and I'm sort of struggling with this with my fifth book right now, is that oh, wouldn't it be nice if so and so killed their father? But then you got to think about what is the inciting action? What would incite that person to actually commit murder? And I think it's different for every single murder that I've written about. Some of it is jealousy, some of it is self-protection. What else have we got? Some of it, one murder was protecting the person they murdered, strangely enough, in the first book. So yeah, it's I haven't yet come up with, I mean, I don't know if I could do it except in self-defense, but obviously enough people do it that we get some really good books out of it.
You know you're talking to a mystery writer when I'm going to quote you more or less. Wouldn't it be nice if so and so killed their father? Put in context, yes, that's how mystery writers think. Um, Also in your bio, you mentioned the Meredith Island Christmas mystery, and I could not let you go without you telling me about that.
So the book that's coming out now, A Killing Cold, takes place at Christmas. This is a tradition among people who write traditional mysteries and cozy mysteries to often do a Christmas book. And there are a couple of writers who have actually done all their books are Christmas. Well, they have a whole series which is are Christmas books. Um, and I th this book is really an homage to Agatha Christie, who I grew up reading. A lot of us grew up reading, and it's Kate is waiting for her daughter to come. She wants to spend, they're going to spend Christmas together a long length of time. Alex is a lawyer and she doesn't get away very often. But she shows up with Kate's ex-husband, um, Detective Chief Inspector James Hewitt. And there's also a bunch of other people who come. Somebody dies, and there is a big snowstorm. Um, and everybody's stuck on the island. So it's like the Agatha Christie's where nobody can leave. And I think, and then there were none, I think is one of the books she writes about. So it's almost like it's a closed island mystery. Somebody told me, I said the other day, oh, you write closed room, a variation on closed room mysteries. And somebody dies from cyanide poisoning. So again, classic Agatha Christie. And because they do not have, they don't have any connection, any way to do forensics. James can call some of the guys on the police force on the mainland, but that's about it. They can't even do an autopsy on because well, yes, they have a doctor and he knows he could probably do a halfway decent job, but you don't want to touch the body in case something happens when it goes to court. So it's all old-fashioned police work, and that's sort of what I wanted for this one. And um, they spend their Christmas solving a mystery.
I have to admit to you, I'm very much enjoying A Dark Death. Finally got to the death, but um, well, you don't put it in the front,
I
not
don't
like.
put it in the front.
Um, I am very excited to read A Killing Cold, so I hope it is coming out soon. I tell this to everyone. I don't know who won your category. Um, I am very strict on not knowing who won. So, Alice, I can sincerely wish you good luck.
Thank you.